They forced her to marry an old man with no money. But the ending surprised everyone. Emily Parker felt her legs trembling as she walked down the narrow church aisle. Each step seemed to weigh a ton, and the white dress borrowed from her neighbor itched her skin. She could barely breathe properly, not because of the tight fabric, but because she knew her life was about to change forever in a way she had never imagined. At the altar waited a man she had only seen twice in her life. Richard Thompson had graying hair, a neatly trimmed beard with white strands mixed in, and he looked at the floor as if he too wanted to be anywhere else. He wore a dark suit that seemed too new for someone who supposedly had no money. His hands trembled as she approached. "Everything will be fine," whispered her cousin, Rachel, who held the small bouquet of wildflowers. Emily wanted to scream that nothing would be fine. She wanted to run from that simple church in rural Pennsylvania and never look back. But the image of her mother in the hospital bed, weak and pale, came to her mind. The bills piling up. Frank Miller's men knocking on the door in the middle of the night, threatening, demanding. "We are gathered here today," began the priest, and Emily felt the world spin. Richard took her hand. His was cold and sweaty. He looked at her for the first time, and Emily saw something in his brown eyes she didn't expect to see. Shame. He was as ashamed as she was. The ceremony lasted 15 minutes that felt like hours. Emily repeated the words the priest told her, but her voice came out weak, almost inaudible. When it came time for the kiss, Richard merely touched her forehead lightly with his lips. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The few people in the church applauded without much enthusiasm. Emily's mother, Mrs. Margaret, cried in the front pew, but they weren't tears of joy. Frank Miller's brother, the loan shark, sat at the back of the church with a satisfied smile. That man, Frank, had been the one who arranged everything. Emily's family owed $140,000 for her mother's cancer treatments, money they would never be able to repay. "My offer is simple," Frank had said 3 weeks ago, sitting in the small living room of their house. "You marry my brother, and the debt disappears. All of it." "This is madness," Emily had replied, but her voice lacked strength. "Madness is thinking you'll be able to pay me back. My brother is a lonely man. He wants companionship. You need a solution. Everyone wins." Now, leaving the church on that Saturday afternoon, Emily wondered who really won in that situation. Certainly not her. Richard had an old car, a blue Civic that must have been about 20 years old. He opened the door for her without saying a word. His house was just 10 minutes away, on a quiet street on the outskirts of Stonebridge. It was a simple one-story house with peeling paint and an unkempt garden. "This is it," he said, and they were the first words he had spoken directly to her since the altar. Inside, the house was clean, but clearly inhabited by someone who had been alone for a long time. The furniture was old but well maintained. There were few decorations. On the living room wall, Emily noticed an old wedding photo, a younger Richard, next to a smiling brunette woman. "My first wife," he said, noticing her gaze. "Catherine. She passed away 8 years ago." "I'm sorry." Richard nodded and went to the kitchen. Emily stood still in the middle of the room, not knowing what to do. She had a small suitcase with her clothes. Everything she owned fit in one suitcase. "You must be hungry," Richard returned with a glass of water. "There's some food in the fridge. I'm not a good cook, but—" "I can cook," Emily said quickly. "I'm a nurse, but I know how to cook well." "Oh yes, a nurse." He seemed not to know what to say. "The bedroom is over there. You can have the bed. I'll sleep on the couch." "What?" "I'll sleep on the couch," he repeated, avoiding her gaze. "Don't worry. I won't— you don't have to—" Emily understood what he was trying to say. She felt a mix of relief and confusion. "Why did you agree to this?" she asked. "To this marriage?" Richard took a while to answer. He sat down on the old sofa and ran his hand over his tired face. "Frank is my younger brother. He's always been troubled, always getting into trouble. I've tried to help him my whole life. When he asked me for this favor, he said it was to save a family, that you and your mother were desperate." He looked at her. "I know what it's like to lose someone because you don't have money for treatment. I lost my Catherine that way." Emily felt a tightness in her chest. She didn't know what to say. "But don't be mistaken," Richard continued, his voice growing more serious. "I know my brother didn't do this out of kindness. He never does anything out of kindness. There must be some other reason. There always is." "Then why did you accept?" "Because you and your mother needed it. And because—" He hesitated. "Because I'm tired of being alone in this house. I don't expect you to love me. I don't expect anything, really. But maybe we can make this less bad than it seems." That night, Emily lay in the bed that smelled of laundry detergent and lavender. She could hear Richard moving around in the living room. The couch creaked every time he changed position. She couldn't sleep. She kept staring at the ceiling, thinking about how her life had changed so quickly. 3 months ago, she was happy. She worked at the county hospital, had plans to specialize, was starting to date a new doctor. Then came her mother's diagnosis: advanced stage breast cancer. The treatment through the National Health Service was taking too long, and the doctors were clear. Without quick treatment, she wouldn't have much time. Emily had used all her savings. She borrowed money from friends, from family. It wasn't enough. That's when the neighbor, Mrs. Barbara, suggested Frank Miller. Everyone in town knew he lent money, quick money, no questions asked. Emily knew it was dangerous, but she was desperate. The treatment worked. Her mother was getting better. But the price for it was being collected now. The next day, Emily woke up to the smell of coffee. She left the bedroom and found the kitchen table set. Bread, butter, hot coffee, even some fruit. "Good morning," Richard said. He had dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept well either. "I didn't know what you liked, so I made the basics." "Thank you." Emily sat down, still feeling strange in that situation. They ate in awkward silence. Emily noticed that Richard chewed slowly, as if he were in pain. He took some medicine from his pocket and discreetly took it. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Just a headache," he answered too quickly. After breakfast, Richard said he had some things to do and left. Emily was alone in the house. She explored a little. The house had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a living room, a kitchen, and a back area. Everything was old but clean. It had that smell of an elderly person's home, a mix of mothballs and glycerin soap. On the nightstand in the bedroom, Emily found a note. "Sorry for all this. I know it's not fair to you. Make yourself at home. If you need anything, there's money in the blue coffee can in the kitchen. Richard." Emily held the note, feeling a pang of something she couldn't identify. Pity, gratitude, confusion. The following days were strange. Richard left early and returned in the late afternoon. He always left notes. "There's lunch in the fridge. I need to go out today. I'll be back tonight. There's extra money in the coffee tin if you want to buy something for yourself." Emily tried to keep the house organized. She cooked, cleaned, as if she were a guest trying to pay for her stay. They talked little. Richard was polite but distant. He always slept on the couch, always kept his distance. 1 week after the wedding, Emily woke up in the middle of the night thirsty. She went to the kitchen and stopped when she saw a light on in the living room. Richard was sitting on the couch, hunched over, with his head in his hands. "Are you okay?" she asked. Richard lifted his head, surprised. His eyes were red. "Sorry, did I wake you?" "No, I came to get water. Are you crying?" "No, I just—" He wiped his face quickly. "Sometimes I don't sleep well." Emily sat in the armchair across from him. For the first time, she really looked at that man. He looked tired, very tired. He had deep wrinkles around his eyes. His hands were large, with calluses from someone who had worked hard. "You can talk to me," she said gently. "I know this situation is strange, but we're in this together in a way." Richard was silent for a long moment. "Today marks 8 years since Catherine passed away," he finally said. "I'm always like this on this day." "What was she like?" A small, sad smile appeared on his face. "She was a nurse too. It's funny. You two would have gotten along, I think. She was strong, determined, took care of so many people." His voice broke. "But when she got sick, I couldn't do anything. We didn't have money. I was just a mechanic. I tried to get loans, sell things, but it wasn't enough. She waited in line at the county hospital for months. By the time she finally got treatment, it was too late. Emily felt tears in her own eyes. "I'm sorry. That's why I agreed to marry you," Richard continued. "When Frank told me about your mother, about you trying to save her, I saw myself in that situation. I thought, if someone had helped me 8 years ago, Catherine might still be alive. So even knowing my brother has ulterior motives, I wanted to help." They talked until dawn. Emily told him about her mother, about the desperation of seeing someone you love suffering and not being able to do anything. Richard talked more about Catherine, about how they met, about the plans they had and never fulfilled. It was the first time Emily felt that maybe, just maybe, that situation wasn't completely hopeless. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the second week, Emily went back to work. The hospital was 20 minutes away by bus. She worked 12-hour shifts, taking care of patients in the medical ward. The work was tiring, but she liked it. It made sense to her, helping people. When she came home, she always found something. A dinner ready, flowers from the garden in a vase, small gestures that Richard made without saying anything. She started to reciprocate. She left his favorite food, fixed buttons on his coat, organized the medicine he took. It was on a Thursday that everything really started to change. Emily came home early because her shift had been shortened. She entered through the kitchen and heard noise coming from the back of the house. She followed the sound and found a door she had never noticed before, half hidden by a cabinet. It was ajar. Outside there was a structure she hadn't seen, a workshop. And inside, Richard was working on an old car, a light blue Beetle completely taken apart. He had a mechanic's shirt stained with grease and was so focused that he didn't notice Emily standing in the doorway. "Wow," she said, and Richard almost dropped the tool he was holding. "Emily, you're back early. What is all this?" Richard wiped his hands on an old rag. "It's just a hobby. I restore old cars sometimes. It's no big deal." But it was a big deal. Emily looked around. There were organized tools, parts, technical drawings. There were 2 other partially restored cars, a red Pinto and a silver Mustang. "Richard, this is incredible," he blushed. "It's just to pass the time." "Just to pass the time?" Emily approached the Beetle. "This is art. Look at the work you're doing." "My father had a shop," Richard explained, relaxing a bit. "I grew up around cars. After I retired from my other job, I got back into this. It calms me." "So you were a mechanic?" "I was, and other things too." He quickly changed the subject. "Want to see? I can show you what I'm doing." They spent an hour there. Richard explained every detail, his hands moving familiarly among the parts. Emily saw his face light up when he talked about engines, about restoration. It was as if he were a different person there. "Why did you hide this from me?" she asked. "I didn't hide it. You never asked. And I didn't want you to think I was spending money on these things when we don't have extra money." "Yeah." Emily looked at him more closely. "Richard, this is your space, your home. You don't need to hide the things that make you happy." That night, they had dinner together, talking more than ever. Richard told stories from when he worked in his father's shop. Emily talked about the hospital, about the patients. They laughed. It was the first time they laughed together. But the peace didn't last long. The following Friday, Emily was in the kitchen preparing lunch when she heard the doorbell. She opened the door and froze. Frank Miller was there, with that fake smile she had learned to hate. "Hello, sister-in-law," he said, entering without being invited. "I came to visit the newlyweds." Emily closed the door slowly, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Richard isn't here." "Great, I wanted to talk to you anyway." Frank sat on the couch as if he owned the place. "So, how are things? Is my brother treating you well?" "Everything's fine." "Are you sleeping in the same room?" The question was like a slap in the face to her. "That's none of your business." "Of course it's my business." Frank stood up, his voice getting harder. "I made a deal with you, a real marriage in exchange for the debt, not a little play. We are married. We have the certificate. Paper means nothing. I want guarantees that this marriage is real." He approached her. "I want to know that you're sharing a bed, understand? That this isn't just for show." "Get out of my house," Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your house?" Frank laughed. "This house is my brother's. And you're here by my generosity, don't forget that. The debt can come back at any time if I decide the deal is broken." Before Emily could respond, the door opened. Richard came in, and his expression changed immediately upon seeing Frank there. "What are you doing here?" "I came to visit my brother. Is there a problem?" Richard looked at Emily, who was pale and trembling. "Frank, you can leave." "Look at that little brother bossing me around now." Frank walked to the door. "I just came to let you know I'll be watching. I want to make sure this marriage is real, because if it's not, the debt comes back, with interest." He left, leaving a heavy silence behind. "Did he threaten you?" Richard asked, his voice tense. He wants guarantees that the marriage is real." Richard ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "Sorry. I should have guessed he'd do this. What do we do? I'll talk to him. So I'll make it clear he can't come here and intimidate you. And if he cancels the deal, my mother—" "He won't do that," Richard said with a certainty Emily couldn't place. "I know my brother. He's testing boundaries, but I won't let him intimidate you." But Frank's visits continued. He'd show up unannounced always when Richard wasn't home. He'd ask invasive questions, stared at Emily in a way that made her uncomfortable, wanted details about their lives, whether they slept together, if they argued, if they were happy. "Why is he doing this?" Emily asked Richard one night. "Because he wants control. That's how he operates. Always has." "But why?" Richard hesitated before answering. "When we were kids, our parents died in an accident. I was 17, Frank was 12. I took care of him, worked to support us. But he grew up thinking the world owed him something, that people needed controlling. I tried, but it's not your fault how he turned out. I know, but I still feel responsible." The tension was mounting. Emily slept poorly, had nightmares about Frank showing up. Richard grew increasingly worried. The lines on his face seemed deeper. It was on a Tuesday that everything got worse. Emily woke with a terrible headache. Fever, body aches. She tried to get up, but her legs wouldn't obey, fell back onto the bed. "Richard," she called weakly, but her voice wasn't loud enough. She didn't know how much time had passed. Hours, maybe. She was floating between sleep and consciousness, felt so cold but was sweating. At some point, she heard the door open. "Emily." Richard's voice sounded distant. "Emily." She felt strong hands lifting her, cool water on her face, something soft placed on her forehead. "You're burning up with fever," Richard said, and his voice was different, firm, controlled, professional. "Emily, can you hear me?" I'm giving you medicine. You need to drink water. Can you do that?" Over the next few days, Emily floated in a haze of fever and pain, but through that haze, Richard was always there. She remembered gentle hands changing cool compresses, being helped to sit up for soup, soft words saying everything would be all right. When the fever finally broke, Emily opened her eyes and saw Richard sleeping in the chair beside the bed. He had huge dark circles. His beard was unkempt. He had taken care of her. "Richard," she called, and he woke immediately. "Emily, how are you feeling?" "Better." "What? How long was I sick?" 4 days. It was a bad flu." He touched her forehead. "The fever's gone. Thank God. You took care of me all this time." "Of course, you needed it." Emily felt tears in her eyes. "Why? Why are you being so good to me?" Richard seemed surprised by the question. "Because you're my wife, and because—" he hesitated. "Because nobody should go through that alone." "But this marriage, it's not real, it was forced." "You don't have to. Emily, real or not, we're in this together, and I'll never leave you alone when you need help." It was in that moment, with that simple declaration, that something shifted in Emily's heart. She looked at this older, tired man with his calloused hands and gentle eyes, and saw something she hadn't seen before. Genuine kindness, honor. Someone who kept his word, even when it would have been easier not to. "How did you know what to do?" she asked. When Catherine got sick, I spent months caring for her, learned about medication, symptoms, how to comfort someone who's suffering. His voice grew distant. It wasn't enough to save her, but I learned. You'd make a good nurse. Think I'm a bit old for a career change, he said with a small smile. In the following days, Emily recovered. Richard prepared light meals, made sure she took her medication on time, and only went back to sleeping on the couch when she insisted she was completely fine. You need to rest too, she said. You've barely slept these past few days. I know, I just wanted to make sure you were okay. A week later, Emily was strong enough to return to work. At the hospital, her co-workers commented on how much weight she had lost. It was a bad flu, she explained, but I'm better now. Did your husband take good care of you? Asked Deborah, an older nurse. Emily realized it was the first time someone had referred to Richard as her husband, without it sounding strange. Yes, he took very good care of me. You're lucky. Not every man does that. Emily thought about that all day. Lucky. Was she really lucky? It had all started in such a terrible way, a forced marriage to pay off a debt. But Richard was turning out to be so much more than she had expected. When she returned home that evening, she found Richard in the kitchen struggling with the oven door. What happened? The door's stuck. It won't open. And I'm sure the burner is acting up too. We can call someone to fix it. And pay $150 for a service call? Richard shook his head. Let me see what I can do. Emily watched him work. He grabbed some tools from the workshop and began carefully taking the stove apart. His hands moved with confidence, knowing exactly what to do. Within half an hour, he had fixed the door and the burner. There, he said, wiping his hands. It should work now. How did you learn to do that? When you grow up poor, you learn to fix things because you can't afford to replace them. He shrugged. And working on cars teaches you a lot about mechanics in general. You're full of surprises, Emily said, smiling. Good surprises, I hope. Yes, good surprises. They cooked together that night. Emily noticed how easy it was to be around him. Richard had a calm, peaceful presence. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it was always something worth hearing. Emily, he said as they were having dinner, I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? For trying to make this work. For being kind to me, even in this whole situation. I know it's not easy. You're trying too, and being much kinder than you need to be. I want you to know, Richard continued, choosing his words carefully, that if you want to leave, you can. If you meet someone, if you want to start your life over, I won't hold you back. I can talk to Frank, find another way to make sure the debt doesn't come back to you. Emily was silent for a moment, processing what he was saying. Why are you saying this? Because you're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. It's not fair for you to be tied down to an old man like me. Richard, you're not that old. I'm 58, Emily. You're 32. When I'm 70, you'll still be in your 40s. That's not fair to you. Life is rarely fair, Emily said softly. And honestly, I've been in relationships with men my own age who treated me much worse than you treat me. So no, I don't want to leave. At least not now. Richard looked at her with an expression Emily couldn't decipher. Thank you, he finally said. The weeks passed. They fell into a routine. Emily worked her shifts at the hospital. Richard had his projects in the workshop. They cooked together, watched TV together, talked about their day. It was strange how something that had started so wrong was becoming almost normal. But Frank didn't let them forget the circumstances. He kept showing up, always with some excuse, always asking questions, always reminding them that he was watching. Is the marriage working? He asked one afternoon, showing up while Emily was watering the garden. Yes. Do you two fight? Every couple fights sometimes. Do you sleep together? Emily felt anger rise in her chest. Frank, that's crossing the line. No, it's not. I have the right to make sure the agreement is being followed. We're married. We have a certificate. What more do you want? I want a real marriage. I want Richard's grandchildren. I want to know this isn't just paper. Emily dropped the hose. Are you serious? You want us to have children just to prove the marriage is real? Why not? Normal couples have children. We're not a normal couple. You forced us into this. Frank moved closer to her, his eyes cold. Watch your tone, little sister-in-law. Remember, I can still cancel the agreement. Your mother is better now, but what if she needs more treatment? Do you have money saved up? No? Then you better cooperate. Richard arrived at that moment and saw the scene. Frank, get out of here now. Look at him defending his little wife. How cute. I'm serious. Leave before I throw you out. Frank laughed, but he left. After he was gone, Richard turned to Emily. What did he say? Emily was trembling. He wants us to have children, to prove the marriage is real. He said that? Yes. And he threatened to bring the debt back if we don't cooperate. Richard clenched his fists. This is over. I'll handle this. How? He has proof of the debt. He can make my family suffer. Trust me, Richard said, his voice hardening in a way Emily had never heard before. I'll take care of it. That night Richard left without saying where he was going. He came back late with a grim expression. What happened? Emily asked. I talked to Frank, made it clear he can't come here to intimidate you anymore. And he agreed. He didn't have a choice. Emily wanted to ask more questions, but something in Richard's posture made her stop. There was something about him in that moment that she hadn't seen before, a toughness, a certainty, as if he was capable of much more than he appeared. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Frank stopped showing up as often, but Emily felt that it wasn't over. Something was happening, something she didn't fully understand. One night she couldn't sleep. She got up to get water and saw a light on in the workshop. Richard was there, but he wasn't working on any car. He was sitting, looking at a set of old papers. Emily knocked lightly on the door. Richard, is everything okay? He quickly put the papers in a box. Yes, just organizing some old things. Are you hiding something from me? Richard sighed. Emily, there are things in my past that you're better off not knowing. Why not? Because they could put you in danger. That answer scared Emily more than anything else. Richard, what are you talking about? It's better this way. Trust me. But Emily couldn't trust completely, not when there were so many mysteries, not when Richard had these moments where he seemed like a completely different person. She started paying more attention. She noticed that Richard sometimes went out and came back with small injuries, that he had old scars scattered over his body, that he seemed to know all kinds of people when they went to the market, from the bakery owner to tough men who looked like they'd been through trouble. Who are you really? She asked one night. I'm Richard Thompson, retired mechanic. No, there's more to it. I'm not stupid. I see how people look at you on the street. I see how Frank is afraid of you, even though he tries to hide it. I see you know much more about many things than you should. Richard fell silent for a long time. Emily, please, don't ask things I can't answer. Why can't you? Because I made a deal with myself a long time ago. When Catherine passed away, I promised I would leave that life behind. That I would just be a simple man living a simple life. And that's what I am now. But you were something else before. I was. But that doesn't matter anymore. Emily wanted to press further, but she saw something in his eyes. Pain, regret, fear. So she let it go for now. Things continued like this for a few more weeks. A strange peace. Richard in the workshop, Emily at work. They were learning to live together, even starting to enjoy it. That's when everything fell apart. Emily was coming home from work on a Friday when she saw a car parked in front of the house, an expensive car. A man in a suit was at the door, talking to Richard. "Ah, you must be Emily," the man said as she approached. "I'm Howard Bennett. I have a business proposition for your husband." Richard looked tense. "Emily, this is an old acquaintance of mine. He's leaving." "Not so fast," Howard smiled. "I came to talk about a job, a service I need." "I don't work with that anymore," Richard said firmly. "With what?" Emily asked. Howard looked at her with interest. "Ah, you don't know? Your husband hasn't told you about his past?" "Howard, Leave, Richard said, his voice dangerously low. Richard here was a very good private investigator, one of the best. He solved cases that no one else could, found people, uncovered secrets. Howard turned to Richard. I need someone with your skills. I'm willing to pay very well. I'm not interested. $20,000 for 1 week of work. Emily saw Richard hesitate. $20,000 was a lot of money. It was more than they made in months. No, Richard said finally. Think about it. That money could change your life, could give a better life to your new wife. I said no. Howard left a card on the table. If you change your mind, call me. The offer stands. After he left, Emily turned to Richard. Private investigator? I was. A long time ago. Why did you stop? Because that kind of work takes a toll. And I've paid enough. Richard, $20,000. No, it doesn't matter how much it is. I'm not going back to that life. Emily wanted to argue, but she saw the determination on his face, so she let it go. But the money Howard offered stayed in her head. $20,000. With that money they could do so much. Fix the house, have an emergency fund, help her mother. She started thinking about Richard's past. Private investigator. That explained many things. The way he observed people, how he always seemed to analyze situations, how Frank was afraid of him. A week later, another problem arose. Emily was in the kitchen when she heard loud knocks on the door. She opened it and saw 3 women standing there. The one in front was Gladys, a neighbor known for gossiping about everyone in the neighborhood. Emily, we need to talk, Gladys said, uninvited, pushing the door open and entering. About what? About your sham marriage. Emily felt her stomach turn. What are you talking about? Everyone in the neighborhood knows, another woman, Mildred, said. You don't sleep in the same room. You're never seen kissing or touching. It's not a real marriage. What happens inside my home is none of your business, Emily said, trying to stay calm. It is when you're disrespecting the institution of marriage, Gladys declared, as if she were some kind of judge. It's a sin. Gladys, for heaven's sake, don't you have anything better to do? We're just trying to help. A marriage needs to be true before God, and yours clearly isn't. Emily was about to respond when Richard appeared behind her. Ladies, he said calmly, but his presence filled the doorway. I appreciate your concern about our marriage, but it's fine. And now if you'll excuse me, I have things to do. He closed the door gently but firmly. Don't mind them, he told Emily. Small-town gossip. But Emily was upset. She went to the market the next day and felt the stares, the conversations that stopped when she passed by, the whispers. Everyone was talking about their marriage. I heard he paid to marry her, one woman said loudly, clearly wanting to be heard. Poor girl. So young, tied to an old man with no future, another commented. Emily bought what she needed and rushed back home, tears in her eyes. Richard found her in the kitchen, crying. What happened? Everyone is talking about us, saying our marriage isn't real, treating me with pity. Richard hugged her. It was the first time he had done that, a firm, protective hug. Let them talk. We know the truth. And what is the truth? Emily asked, her voice muffled against his chest. What are we? Richard pulled back slightly to look at her. We're 2 people trying to make the best of a difficult situation. And if you ask me, I think we're doing a good job. But it's not real. It's not a real marriage. What makes a marriage real? Richard asked softly. Paper? We have that, living together. We do, taking care of each other. We do that. What else is needed? Love, Emily said without thinking. A real marriage has love. Richard fell silent. His hands were still on her shoulders. Emily, he began, but was interrupted by knocks on the door. It was Frank again, and he wasn't alone. He had 2 men with him, both big and intimidating. Richard, my brother, Frank said with false cheer. Brought some friends to meet you. What do you want, Frank? I want to have a little chat about the deal we made. We've already talked about that. Yes, but the situation has changed. Frank entered, his men following him. See, I've been thinking. This marriage, it needs to bear fruit, you know. And I'm not seeing any sign that you're fulfilling the agreement completely. We're married, we live together. What more do you want? I've told you. I want guarantees. And there's something else. Frank smiled, but it was a cold smile. I need a favor from you. What kind of favor? You know Howard Bennett, right? He has a job and I told him you'd take it. Richard grew very quiet. You had no right to do that. Yes, I did. You owe me, brother. You owe me for everything I've done. And now it's time to pay up. I'm not going back to working as an investigator. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, the deal with your little wife here is off. The debt comes back. And this time, with much higher interest. Emily felt the world spinning. You can't do that. I can and I will, dear. Frank turned to Richard. So, what's it going to be? Do you take the job? Or do I send my boys here to visit Emily's mother in the hospital? It was too fast for Emily to see properly. 1 second, Richard was standing still. The next, he had one of Frank's men against the wall, the man's arm twisted behind his back. You will not threaten my wife or her family, Richard said, and his voice was so cold that Emily felt afraid. Ever again. Frank raised his hands. Easy, brother, no violence, just explaining the situation. The situation is that you're going to leave my house now, and you're not coming back. What about the job? I'll take care of the job, but only because it's that or what you threaten innocent people. After this, I want nothing more to do with you, understood? Frank smiled, satisfied. Understood. I knew you'd come to see reason. Howard is expecting you Monday morning. After they left, Richard sat on the couch, trembling. Richard, Emily approached cautiously. I'm sorry. You shouldn't have seen that. Seen what? You defending us? Seen the violence, seen what kind of person I can become when pushed too far. Emily sat beside him. Richard, what did you really do as an investigator? He took a long time to answer. I solved problems for people who couldn't go to the police. Sometimes they were simple things, finding missing persons, uncovering betrayals. But other times, he hesitated. Other times they were more complicated, dangerous. I had to deal with bad people, do things I'm not proud of. Illegal things. Sometimes borderline, sometimes over the line, but I always tried to do what was right. Protect the innocent, punish the guilty. He looked at her. But it changes you, hardens you. And when Catherine died, I realized I'd become someone she wouldn't recognize. So I stopped, put it all away, became just a retired mechanic in a small town. And now Frank is forcing you back. Yeah, but just this once. After that, it's over. Emily took his hand. I'm coming with you. What? No. You'll need help, and I won't stay here worrying. Emily, it could be dangerous. Then you'll definitely need a nurse nearby. Richard looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, truly smiled. You're stubborn, and you're just noticing that now. On Monday, they went together to Howard Bennett's office. It was a commercial building downtown. Howard greeted them with a smile. Richard knew you'd accept. What do you need? Straight to the point. I like that. Howard opened a folder. My daughter is missing. She left 2 weeks ago, and nobody knows where she is. Emily saw Richard's expression change. How old is she? 23. Howard showed a photo, a pretty brunette girl smiling at the camera. She was having problems with her boyfriend. They fought. The next day she left home and didn't return. Did you call the police? I did. They said she's an adult, probably just wants some time alone. But I know my daughter. Something's wrong. Richard studied the photo. The boyfriend? Justin Walker. Works at an auto parts store. The police talked to him but found nothing. You think he has something to do with the disappearance? I do. He was possessive. I never liked him. But Rachel was rebellious, wouldn't listen to me. Richard asked a few more questions. Took addresses, numbers, photos. Emily watched, impressed with how he worked. Methodical, careful, making connections she wouldn't have seen. "I'll need a few days," Richard said finally. "How long?" "A week, maybe less, depends on what I find." "And payment?" "Half now. Half when I find your daughter." Howard agreed. He passed an envelope to Richard. 10,000 now. Another 10 when you find her." They left the office. In the car, Emily was processing everything. "You're really going to do this?" "I have no choice, but Emily, this kind of case, missing persons, rarely end well." "What do you mean?" "I mean she might be dead or worse." "What could be worse?" Richard didn't answer, and Emily didn't press. They spent the rest of the day investigating. Richard talked to the girl's friends, neighbors, her co-workers. Emily was impressed with how he got people to talk. He had a calm, respectful way that inspired trust. In the late afternoon, they went to the auto parts store where Justin worked. He was a young, strong guy with tattoos on his arms. "Yeah, I dated Rachel," he said when Richard asked, "but we broke up. She decided she wanted something else in life." "Did you two fight?" "Every couple fights." "What did you fight about?" Justin hesitated. "About her wanting to leave town, go to New York City, study. I didn't want her to go." "Why?" "Because New York City is dangerous. Because we were fine here." "Do you know where she is now?" "No, and if I did, I wouldn't tell. She has the right to start her life over." There was something in the way Justin spoke that didn't convince Emily. He seemed too nervous, too defensive. Back in the car, she commented on this to Richard. "You felt it too," he said. "He's hiding something." "Do you think he hurt her?" "I don't know. But we'll find out." In the following days, Richard worked like Emily had never seen anyone work. He talked to everyone who knew Rachel, checked cell phones, social media, bank transactions. He had contacts everywhere, people who owed him favors. Emily helped as she could. She had a way with people too, and often got information that Richard couldn't. It was on a Thursday that they got a lead. A friend of Rachel's, Ashley, confided something to Emily. "Look, I shouldn't say this, but Rachel was afraid of Justin. He was very jealous. Controlled everything she did, who she saw, where she went." "Did he hit her?" "I don't know. She never admitted it. But I saw marks sometimes. She said she had fallen, hit something, but it was too many coincidences." Emily told this to Richard. "So he's violent," Richard said, his jaw tight. "And violent men do terrible things when they feel they're losing control." "Do you think he—" "We'll find out." Richard started following Justin, discreetly keeping his distance. Emily stayed in the car, watching. That's how they saw Justin leaving town one night, driving to a rural area. "Where is he going?" Emily asked. "Let's follow and find out." They kept their distance. Justin stopped at an abandoned property, an old farm that looked deserted for years. He got out of the car, looked around, and went into a building that looked like an old barn. "Stay here," Richard told Emily. "No, I'm going with you." "Emily, don't argue with me." They got out of the car quietly. The night was dark, only the moon lighting the way. They got close to the barn and heard voices. Justin was talking to someone. Richard spied through a crack in the door. Emily saw his expression change. "What is it?" she whispered. "She's there, Rachel. She's alive." "Thank God. But something's wrong." Richard pushed the door slowly. Inside, Justin was talking to Rachel. She was fine, healthy, didn't seem hurt, and she didn't seem afraid of him. "Justin, we can't stay here anymore," Rachel was saying. "My father hired an investigator. They're going to find us. Then we'll go further away to another state. I can't lie anymore. I just wanted him to accept us together." Richard came out of hiding. "So you're still together," he said, making both of them jump. "Who are you?" Justin stepped forward, protective. "I'm the investigator her father hired," Richard said calmly. "And you, Rachel, caused a lot of worry." Rachel started to cry. "I didn't want to. But my father wouldn't accept Justin, said he wasn't good enough, that I deserved someone better, but I love him. So you ran away and are hiding here." "We were going to leave together. For New York City. Start over where my father couldn't control us. Richard sighed. And you, Justin? Why did you lie to me? To protect her. Her father has money, has power. He could make bad things happen to me. Emily came out of hiding too. She looked at Rachel, saw a young woman, scared, trying to take control of her own life. Rachel, Emily said gently, your father is desperate. He thinks you're in danger. He always thinks I'm in danger. He always wanted to control everything in my life. But you can't just disappear. That's not fair to him. And what he did to me was fair, Rachel replied, tears streaming down. He never listened to me, never accepted my choices, tried to choose my career, my friends, even who I dated. I just wanted to be free. Richard and Emily exchanged looks. Emily could see that Richard was torn. Richard, she said softly, what are we going to do? He was silent for a long moment, looking at the young couple. Finally, he sighed. Rachel, you need to talk to your father. For real. Explain how you feel. Give him a chance to understand. He won't understand. Maybe not. But you have to try. Because this running away, it will only make things worse. Your father will look for you. He'll use every resource he has. And you'll always be running, always looking over your shoulder. What if he tries to separate us? You're an adult. He can't force you to do anything, but you need to face him. Show him you're strong enough to make your own choices. Justin held Rachel's hand. He's right. We can't run forever. The next morning, Richard took Rachel back to her father's house. Howard opened the door and hugged his daughter, crying, Rachel, thank God, I was so worried. Dad, we need to talk, Rachel said. What followed was a difficult conversation. Rachel explained how she felt, how his control was suffocating her, how she loved Justin no matter what he thought. Howard listened, and Emily could see the pain on his face, the difficulty of accepting that his daughter was no longer a child. I just wanted to protect you, he said finally. I know, Dad, but I need to live my own life, make my own mistakes. It was a process. It wasn't resolved in one day. But Richard had planted the seed, and when they left, Howard paid the rest of the money. Thank you, he said to Richard, for finding her, and for making her see she needed to come back. Just did my job. In the car, on the way home, Emily looked at Richard. You were good at that. It was easier than I expected. She was alive, she was safe. Many cases don't end like that. Is that why you stopped? Because the cases were too bad? Among other things. Richard drove looking at the road. When you see too much bad, it starts to change you. It starts to make you question if it's worth it, if you're really helping or just prolonging the suffering. But you helped today. You helped that family. Maybe. Or maybe I just delayed the inevitable. Maybe Howard and Rachel will never truly understand each other. Emily put her hand on his arm. Richard, you can't control everything. You gave them a chance. What they do with it is their responsibility. He looked at her and smiled slightly. When did you get so wise? I always was. You just weren't paying attention. They laughed, and it was a nice sound, natural, like a real couple would laugh. When they got home, Richard took the envelope with the money. 10,000 reais, he said. Half is yours. Mine? Why? Because you helped me. And because we're partners in this, right? Emily took the money, but it wasn't the money that made her feel warm inside. It was the word partners, the way Richard had said it, as if he really believed it. That night they had dinner and talked about the case, about Rachel and Justin, about parents and children, about control and freedom. You know, Emily said. In a way, I understand, Rachel. Feeling like your life isn't your own, that someone is controlling everything. It's different. She chose to run away. You were forced. But in the end, we both ended up in situations we didn't ask for, trying to make the best of it. Richard was quiet for a moment. Emily, I want you to know something. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. This money, you can use it to start over. Rent a place, get away from me and Frank. Why do you always say that? Because I don't want you to feel trapped, like Rachel felt. Emily stood up and went to where he was. Richard, I don't feel trapped, not anymore. This started forced, yes, but now I'm here because I want to be. Emily, let me finish. She took a deep breath. I know this marriage isn't normal. I know it all started wrong. But you've been kinder, more respectful, more of a partner than any man I've ever known. And I don't want to leave. Richard stood up too, getting very close to her. Are you sure? I am. They stayed like that, looking at each other. The air between them seemed charged. Richard raised his hand, hesitant, and touched her face gently. I don't deserve you, he said softly. Let me decide what you deserve or not. And then they kissed. It was gentle at first, hesitant. But then it deepened, years of Richard's loneliness and months of Emily's confusion meeting in that moment. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. Emily, I don't want you to feel pressured, Richard said. It doesn't have to be anything more than you want it to be. What if I want it to be more? Then we'll take it slow, do it our way. Not because of Frank or the debt or gossip, but because we want to. That night, Emily still slept in the bedroom and Richard on the sofa. But something had changed. There was a promise in the air, a possibility. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. The following weeks were different. Richard and Emily no longer hid. They touched each other when passing by, exchanged kisses in the morning and at night, talked about everything, laughed together. The town noticed the change. The gossip changed its tone. It seems like they're really happy, Mrs. Barbara commented at the market. Who would have thought an arranged marriage that's working out? Another neighbor replied. But not everything was perfect. Frank was still a threat. He hadn't shown up since Richard did the job for Howard, but Emily knew he was around, watching. And Richard still had his secrets. There were nights when he woke up sweating, screaming, nightmares he didn't want to share. There were calls he answered and went outside to talk away from her. There were moments when he stared into nothing with such a sad expression that it broke her heart. Talk to me, Emily asked one night, after another nightmare. It's nothing. Richard, it's not nothing. You're suffering. Let me help you. He sat on the bed, his head in his hands. There are things I've done, Emily. Things I can't change. People I've hurt. When you were an investigator? Yes. I always thought I was on the right side, that I was protecting the innocent. But sometimes the line between right and wrong isn't so clear. Sometimes you have to do bad things to prevent worse ones. Like what? Richard looked at her with tormented eyes. I've beaten people. I've threatened. I've broken laws. All in the name of what I thought was justice, but who am I to decide what justice is? You helped people. You saved lives. And destroyed others. He stood up, starting to pace back and forth. There was a case. A man was abusing his daughter. The police couldn't get evidence. The system wasn't working. The girl's father hired me to fix it. What did you do? I got the proof the police couldn't. But in the process, the man tried to stop me. There was a fight. He ended up badly hurt. He almost didn't survive. But he deserved it. Deserved it. Emily, I'm not a judge. I'm not an executioner. But in that moment, I felt like one. And that scared me. It scared me how much I enjoyed seeing him suffer. Emily approached him, taking his trembling hands. Richard, you're not a monster. You were protecting a child, doing what needed to be done. And how many other things did I do that weren't necessary? How many times did I cross lines because I could, because no one would question me? You stopped. You left that life. But I still carry the marks. I still wake up in the middle of the night seeing the faces of people I hurt. I still wonder if it was worth it. Emily pulled him into an embrace. You're a good man, Richard. With a complicated past, yes, but a good man. And I wouldn't be unafraid of you if I didn't believe that. They stayed like that for a long time. Emily feeling Richard relax in her arms, accepting the comfort she offered. It was during this period that Emily's mother was discharged from the hospital for good. The doctors said the cancer was in remission. She was cured. "Thank God," Mrs. Margaret said, tears in her eyes. "And thank you, Emily, for doing what you did to save me. Mom, I know about the marriage. I know you sacrificed for me." Mrs. Margaret looked at Richard, who was there too. "And you, Richard. Thank you for taking care of my daughter." "It's no sacrifice to care for someone you love," Richard said, and Emily felt her heart race. Love. He had said love. On the way home, Emily was quiet. "Are you okay?" Richard asked. "Did you mean that?" "Mean what?" "That you love me." Richard drove in silence for a moment. "Yes, I meant it." He glanced at her briefly. "I didn't plan it. It wasn't part of the deal. But it happened. I fell in love with you, Emily. Richard, You don't have to say anything. You don't have to feel the same. I just wanted you to know." "But I do," Emily said, her voice trembling. "I fell in love with you too, and it scares me because it wasn't supposed to happen. But it did." Richard pulled the car over to the side of the road. He turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. "Don't be afraid. We'll figure this out together." They kissed there in the parked car with the sun setting behind them, and it was different from their other kisses. It was a promise, a commitment. That night, for the first time, they shared the bed, not because of anyone's pressure, not to prove anything, but because they wanted to be together. Things were finally falling into place. Emily couldn't believe how her life had changed. Just a few months ago, she was desperate, being forced to marry a stranger. Now she was happy, loved, at peace. But peace never lasts long. On a Tuesday, Emily was leaving the hospital when she saw a familiar car. Frank was leaning against it, waiting for her. "Hello, little sister-in-law." "What do you want, Frank?" "I need to talk to you, without Richard around." "I have nothing to say to you." Frank grabbed her arm when she tried to walk past. "Not so fast. Look, I have a proposal for you. Let me go." "Shh, calm down. Just listen to me." He moved closer. "I know you're happy now, I see it. But the reality is you're still together because of me, because of the debt I forgave." So? So I can change my mind. I can say the agreement was broken." "The agreement wasn't broken. No, you had a paper marriage. Now you're really in love. That changes everything." Emily was confused. "How does it change?" "Because now it's not about duty anymore. It's about feelings, and feelings are dangerous. They make people do stupid things." "Where are you going with this?" "I want you to convince Richard to come back to work with me, as an investigator. There's plenty of work I could pass to him. It would pay very well." "Richard doesn't want that life anymore." "But you want a good life, don't you?" "She wants her mother to have security. She wants to have children someday with my brother, give them a good life." "How are you going to do that with the nurse's salary, and what he makes restoring old cars?" Emily wanted to scream. She wanted to say that money wasn't everything. But Frank had touched a nerve. She wanted security. She wanted her mother to never have to worry again. And yes, she had started thinking about children, about a future with Richard. "I'm not going to do that," she said, but her voice came out weak. "Think about it. Talk to him. Because the alternative is me activating the debt again, and this time there will be no negotiation. It will be nothing but suffering." He let go of her arm and walked away, leaving Emily shaking there in the parking lot. She didn't tell Richard that night, nor the next day. She kept it to herself, thinking, trying to decide what to do. It was Richard who noticed something was wrong. "You're quiet," he said one night. "Just tired." "Emily, I know you by now. I know when something's wrong." She almost told him. Almost. But then she thought about what it would be like for Richard. He had finally found peace. He had left that violent life behind. Asking him to go back would be tearing him back into the suffering. "It's fine," she lied. "Just a tough day at work." But Frank didn't give up. He started showing up again, always when Richard wasn't around, always pressuring Emily. "Are you going to destroy your happiness out of pride?" he said during one visit. "You just need to convince him to take on a few jobs. Nothing too dangerous. He won't agree. Then you weren't convincing enough. The pressure was mounting. Emily started having constant headaches. She couldn't sleep properly. Richard kept asking what was wrong, but she always made up excuses. It was then that Richard stumbled upon it. He had come home earlier than expected and saw Frank's car in front of the house. He walked in and found Frank cornering Emily in the kitchen. "What's going on here?" Richard asked, his voice dangerously calm. Frank stepped back from Emily. "Just talking with my sister-in-law." "About what?" "About your future." Richard looked at Emily, who had tears in her eyes. "Emily, did he threaten you?" He wants you to go back to working as an investigator. Said he'd activate the debt again if you didn't agree." Richard went very quiet. When he spoke, his voice was icy. "Frank, get out of my house." "Richard, if you'd just be reasonable." "Now." "Or what? You're going to hit me? Hurt me?" Frank laughed. "You're not that man anymore, brother. You've gone soft, weak. Don't test me. Either you agree to work with me or the debt comes back. Simple as that." Richard took a step toward Frank, and Emily saw that transformation again. The toughness returning, the violence just beneath the surface. "Richard, no," she said. "It's not worth it. He can't keep doing this." "I know, but there's another way." Richard stopped, looking at her. "What other way?" Emily thought quickly. There was something Frank had said weeks ago, something about Richard having evidence, about him protecting the community. "Richard," she said carefully, "you said you had kept something, as insurance, something that protects us from Frank." Richard understood immediately. "Yes, I do." "What?" Frank seemed nervous now. "What is she talking about?" "You really think I'd enter this deal without an ace up my sleeve?" And Richard said, "I have evidence, Frank, of everything, every illegal activity of yours, every threat, every dirty cent, all documented. And if anything happens to me or Emily, that evidence goes straight to the authorities." "You're bluffing." "Want to bet your freedom on it?" Frank turned pale. He looked from Richard to Emily, processing. "You wouldn't do that. I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother a long time ago. When you chose this path, when you started using people, when you became what you are now." "Richard, the deal stands. The debt is forgiven. But you will never threaten my wife or my family again. Understood? Because next time I won't pity you." Frank left without another word. Emily waited until she heard his car drive away before letting herself fall apart. "He had been threatening me for weeks," she confessed, crying. "I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to drag you back into that life, but he said he would bring the debt back, that he would make my mother suffer." Richard held her tight. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted to protect you. You were so happy, so at peace. I didn't want to take that away from you." "Emily, we're a team. We face things together, always." "I'm sorry." "No, I'm the one who's sorry. My brother is tormenting you because of me, because of my past. It's not your fault." "Yes, it is. But I will fix this. Once and for all." In the following days, Richard tracked down every contact he had. He gathered more evidence, documented everything Frank had done. And then he did something that surprised Emily. He went to the authorities. "But I thought you had left that life," Emily said when he told her. "I did, but that doesn't mean I'll let Frank keep hurting people. He needs to be stopped. And you? Won't you have problems because of the things you did?" "Maybe, but it's worth it if it means you're safe." The authorities investigated. It took a few weeks, but eventually Frank was arrested. Not for threatening Emily, but for several other illegal activities Richard had documented. Predatory loan sharking, threats, extortion. "He will be in prison for a long time," Richard said when it was all over. "And you?" "I talked to them about my past. I was honest. Some of the things I did were borderline, but nothing they can prosecute me for now. And my cooperation in arresting Frank helped." Emily hugged him, relieved. "It's over then. It's over." But there was one more thing. The night after Frank's arrest, Richard sat Emily down in the living room. "There's something I need to tell you. Something you deserve to know. You're scaring me. Richard took a deep breath. The marriage, the way it happened, it wasn't completely as I told you. What do you mean? Frank came to me with the proposal, yes. Told me about you and your mother, about the debt. But, Emily, I already knew who you were. What do you mean? Your father, Daniel Parker. He was my partner many years ago, before he passed away. Emily was shocked. You knew my father? I did. We worked together on a few cases. He was a good man, a good investigator. Richard paused. When he was dying, he made me promise something. He made me promise that if you or your mother ever needed help, I would be there. I promised. So you agreed to marry me because of a promise to my father? At first, yes. But Emily, that changed. What I feel for you now has nothing to do with old promises. It's real. Emily was processing everything. Her father had been an investigator. Richard had known him. Everything was connected in ways she had never imagined. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I was afraid of how you would react, afraid you would think it was all based on duty, not love. And now? Now I can't keep hiding it anymore. You deserve to know the full truth. Emily stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the night was clear. Stars were shining. My father never told me he was an investigator. He always said he worked in security. He wanted to protect you the same way I wanted to. It seems the men in my life love keeping secrets. Emily, she turned to him, but I understand why, and I appreciate that you finally told me. She went back to where he was. Richard, I don't care how this started. I care about where we are now, and now I love you. Truly. Even knowing everything? Especially knowing everything. Because now I know who you really are. A man who keeps promises, who protects those he loves, who tries to do the right thing even when it's hard. Richard pulled her into a hug. I don't deserve you. Then it's a good thing I'm not giving you a choice. They laughed, and the sound filled the house. In the following weeks, they began to build a real life. Emily continued working at the hospital. Richard went back to restoring cars, but now openly. He even started getting orders from other cities. And then an opportunity appeared. Howard Bennett came back to see them. Richard, Emily, thank you for having me. How is Rachel? Emily asked. She's fine. She and Justin are trying to make it work. It's not easy, but they're trying. And I'm trying to be less controlling. He smiled. It's a work in progress. What brings you here? Richard asked. I have a proposal. I bought a workshop, a big one, with state-of-the-art equipment, and I want you to be the manager. You restore the cars, train other mechanics. It's your business, basically. I just provide the capital. Richard was surprised. Why? Because you're good at what you do, because you helped me when I needed it, and because I believe we can do something special here. Richard looked at Emily. What do you think? I think you should do what makes you happy. It would make me happy, he admitted, to have a real workshop, to be able to teach others, to turn this into a serious business. Then accept. And so Richard accepted. The workshop opened 2 months later. It was big, beautiful, with everything he needed. Richard hired 3 young mechanics and started teaching them everything he knew. Emily saw him flourishing. He woke up excited to go to work. He came home talking about the projects. There was a life in his eyes in a way she had never seen before, and their life was finally good. It was on a Saturday night, 6 months after all that Richard did something Emily didn't expect. They were having dinner, a simple meal they had cooked together, when Richard stood up. Emily, there's something I want to ask you. What? He took something out of his pocket, a small box. We're already married. I know that. But that marriage wasn't our choice. It was forced, so I want to do it again. The right way this time. He opened the little box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. Emily Parker Thompson, will you marry me? For real this time. For love, not for debts or old promises. Just because I love you and want to spend the rest of my life with you. Emily was crying. Yes, of course, yes. Richard put the ring on her finger and kissed her. Let's have a real ceremony. Invite the people we love. Celebrate the way it deserves to be celebrated. And that's exactly what they did. 3 months later, on a beautiful spring afternoon, Emily walked down the aisle of a church again. But this time it was different. This time she chose every step. This time she was walking toward the man she loved, who loved her back. Mrs. Margaret was there, healthy and smiling. Rachel and Justin were there, Howard, the colleagues from the hospital, the new friends from the workshop, everyone celebrating. When Emily reached the altar, Richard had tears in his eyes. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "You too." The priest smiled. "We are gathered here today to celebrate the love between Richard and Emily, a love that was tested, that grew, that strengthened through adversity. The ceremony was beautiful. They wrote their own vows. "Emily," Richard began, his voice emotional, "when you came into my life, I was just surviving. But you taught me to live again. You showed me it's never too late to start over, to love, to be happy. I promise to honor you, respect you, love you every day of my life. I promise to be your partner, your best friend, your support. I promise to never keep secrets again, to never let you face things alone. I promise to build a beautiful life with you." Emily was crying when it was her turn. "Richard, I won't lie and say our beginning was easy. It wasn't. I was scared, confused, lost. But you showed me kindness when I expected coldness. You gave me choices when I had been forced. You taught me that true love isn't about grand gestures, but about small daily acts of care and respect. I promise to love you not despite your past, but including it, because everything you went through made you the man you are. And that man is incredible. I promise to be your partner in everything. I promise to remind you of your kindness when you forget. I promise to build a life where we both can be completely ourselves." They exchanged rings, kissed, and the church erupted in applause. At the reception afterward, Emily looked around. All these people celebrating, rejoicing, happy. "What are you thinking about?" Richard asked, coming up behind her and hugging her waist. "I'm thinking about how strange life is, how the worst things sometimes lead us to the best. Do you regret it? How it all started?" Emily turned in his arms. "No, because it brought me to you, and I wouldn't trade that for anything." They danced, laughed, celebrated late into the night, and when they finally went home, to the house that was now truly theirs, Emily felt complete. 2 months later, she discovered she was pregnant. "Richard," she said one morning, her hands trembling as she held the test, "we're going to have a baby." Richard took the test, looked at it, and then at her. And then he lifted her, spinning, laughing like a child. "A baby, we're going to have a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't even come close to what I'm feeling." They sat together, planning. A new little room, colors to paint, possible names. "Boy or girl?" Emily asked. "It doesn't matter, as long as it's healthy." "What if it's 2? Then we'll have 2 to love." The months of pregnancy were magical. Richard was attentive, always making sure Emily was comfortable. He set up the baby's room with his own hands, made a beautiful wooden crib, painted the walls a soft yellow. Emily worked as long as she could, but eventually had to take leave. She stayed home, sewing little clothes, reading books about motherhood, imagining what it would be like. "You're going to be an amazing mother," Richard always said, "and you're going to be a wonderful father." It was on a Sunday morning that the contractions started. Richard rushed her to the hospital, holding her hand throughout the labor. "You can do this," he said. "You're the strongest person I know." And then, after hours that seemed to last an eternity and pass in the blink of an eye, he was born. A boy. Small, perfect, crying loudly. "It's a boy," the nurse announced, placing the baby on Emily's chest. Emily looked at that little creature and felt a love so intense it hurt. Richard was crying, gently touching his son's head. "Look," he whispered, "our son. He's perfect. Just like his mother." They named the boy Joseph after Emily's father. Joseph Thompson came into the world crying, but soon calmed when he felt his parents' warmth. Mrs. Margaret came to visit at the hospital, crying with happiness. "A grandson," she said, holding Joseph. "I have a grandson." "He looks like you," Emily said to Richard. "You think?" I think he has your eyes. It's too early to tell. It doesn't matter who he looks like. He's ours, and he'll be loved more than any child in the world. And it was true. Joseph grew up surrounded by love. Richard was a dedicated father, always present. He took the boy to the workshop, teaching him about cars and engines from an early age. Emily went back to work part-time, but always had time for her son. They were happy, truly happy. Years passed. Joseph grew up, started to talk, to walk. The house was always full of laughter and joy. One afternoon, Emily was organizing some old things when she found the certificate from the first marriage, the forced marriage that had started it all. Richard entered the room and saw her looking at the paper. "What's that?" "Our first certificate from the forced marriage." Richard sat down beside her. "It feels like a lifetime ago." It was, in a way. We were different people then. "Do you regret it?" Emily looked at him. "Being forced, yes, no one should go through that. But the outcome? What we became? Never." "You know," Richard said, taking her hand, "I used to think my life was over when Catherine passed away, that I was just waiting for my time to pass, but then you came into my life, and you showed me it's never too late to start over, to love again, to be happy. You saved me too, from a life of despair and fear. You gave me a choice when I had none. You gave me dignity. You gave me love." They stayed like that, holding hands, thinking about the whole journey, about the difficulties at the beginning, about Frank's threats, about the discoveries of the past, about the revelations, about the small and big victories. "Mom! Dad!" Joseph ran into the room. "Grandma Margaret is here." They stood up, smiling. Life was calling them, a life they had built together against all odds. That evening, with the whole family gathered, having dinner and talking, Emily looked around the table. She saw her mother laughing at something Richard said. She saw Joseph making faces. She saw the happiness in Richard's eyes. And she thought about how different everything had been just a few years ago, how desperate and scared she had been, being forced to marry a stranger. But that stranger had become her best friend, her partner, the love of her life, the father of her son. Life had a strange way of working out. Sometimes the greatest blessings came disguised as the worst tragedies. Sometimes you had to go through the darkest valley to reach the highest mountain. And Emily had gone through her valley. She had climbed her mountain. And now she was at the top, looking at the amazing view that was her life. "What are you thinking about?" Richard asked softly, taking her hand under the table. "How lucky I am." "I'm the lucky one. You gave me a second chance to be happy. We gave each other a second chance." Joseph spilled juice on the table, and Mrs. Margaret rushed to clean it up, laughing. Richard got up to help. Emily stayed seated for another moment, imprinting that scene in her memory. Because that was what mattered, not how it had started, but where it had ended up. And they had ended up in love, in respect, in happiness. They had ended up home. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story. Were you surprised by how everything unfolded? Do you believe Emily and Richard made the right decisions? Share in the comments what moved you most in this journey. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one. Thanks for your company.